Okay, we are live everywhere on all the Warrior Women in Business channels. Very excited to be here for a very special episode of Warrior Women in Business, episode number 58. Can't believe we're already at 58. So, for those of you that don't know me and don't know Warrior Women in Business, I just like to give you a little bit of a brief. And I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time out to attend today and learn what we're going to talk about today, which is leadership latency and how to get out of it. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to be a better leader. So my name is Jasmine Sandler. I am the lead Warrior Women, and I run Warrior Women in Business, which is a subset of JS Media, a branding and digital marketing agency I started in 2006 with the premise of helping small to mid-sized companies, and particularly female-run companies, have an agency where they didn't have to have large budgets, but can still drive results. And out of that business was Warrior Women in Business, which I started as just a very simple idea. I was keynoting a conference in 2016, a women's leadership event, and realized that there were so many smart, capable women who were underserved in the business world, especially where I live in New York City. And I thought it was a shame. So I started the podcast, which has now grown into a conference, an event series, and a partnership program with many other women's organizations that we work with to really help women in business and also women in the arts. So just a couple of things I want to announce before we get into this podcast episode. First and foremost, tomorrow we're having a concert and we have 5 fabulous female-fronted bands here in New York City. This is a concert I devised in 2019, and it's finally becoming a reality. I'm being supported by the New York City Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. This month in New York City, it's New York Music Month, which if you watched our last podcast, I spoke with Shira Gans, who's going to be speaking tomorrow. And she's the woman, she's amazing. She's the woman that pioneered New York Music Month. So the concert is at the local 802. There's going to be information in the show notes. We have maybe 10 free tickets left. It's crazy. But I'm very excited about it because the whole mission of the concert and the series is to help put money in women's pockets, women in the arts, which is definitely an underserved market. So with all of that being said, I'm excited for episode 58. I have Phyllis Wilson on, who is the president of the Women's Military Memorial in Arlington, Virginia. So if you want to say hello, Phyllis, before I jump into things.
Hi, Jasmine, and thank you.
Yes, I'm very happy to have you today. I mean, it's just such a pleasure to have, and this is a little bit different for me because I've had women cross vertical, but never anyone coming from a military background. And my corporate background is with IBM. And IBM, I think the business is so successful because a lot of the executives come from the military and they understand how to build leaders and how to support their staff as well. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a background here on Phyllis before we get started, which I had a very long bio, and luckily Phyllis helped me out because she shortened it a little bit, but oh my God, she's such an amazing person. And I have to say that I found Phyllis on LinkedIn and I saw what she was doing and I said, oh my God, I have to have this woman on my podcast because it really does all that you're doing really to support women and to showcase what you're going to talk about today. Women in the military and what they've done and where they're going is something, and how women help others, lift others. I just thought you were the epitome of that. So thank you for being on. So Phyllis Wilson, she served 37 years in the Army as a military intelligence officer. She served around the globe in 35 countries, including Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, and North America. She's been mobilized numerous times to shoulder the duties of defense of the nation, which is incredible, and has been deployed in Iraq several times as an intelligence analyst with special operations. As you can see, also, I didn't mention, we quickly put together, I've been wanting to do for our characters, a military woman. So we did one today. You can see it on my background. And we're going to be raising money for her foundation through the sales of this t-shirt. But anyway, so Chief Warrant Officer 5, Phyllis J. Wilson, served as the most senior warrant officer in the entire United States Army Reserve and a key member of the executive team managing an organization, this blows me away, of more than 200,000 personnel. I can barely manage 5 people, so I have no idea how you do that. And an annual operating budget of more than 8 billion with a B number dollars. Phyllis is a registered nurse as well and holds 2 master's degrees, not one. She's attended the Defense Language Institute for both German and Spanish and has received numerous military decorations and awards, ranging from the Legion of Merit to the Army Parachutist Badge. And I told Phyllis I would never jump out of a plane. And she said, just do it. And now I'm talking about doing it. So she's been inducted, I'm sorry, into the Army Women's Foundation Hall of Fame, which we're going to talk about today, because I know a lot of people don't even know what that is, at least in my world, and the U.S. Veterans Hall of Fame. She is the president of the Women in Military Service for America Memorial Foundation, which is her background. You can take a look at that today, and she's going to talk about that. The only major national memorial honoring the 3 million women who've defended America, which I had no idea, that there were 3 million women in the military since the Revolutionary War to today. I mean, I can't wait to come down and actually see this memorial. So she became the president in 2020, and she's been named Power Player of the Week on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace. So when I tell you a major power player doing so much to highlight the awareness of women in the military. So first of all, I want to say thank you for taking the time to talk with me and my Warrior Women audience. And one thing that we'd been talking about kind of pre-show is as women, we tend to have, because we're women, we love to nurture. We love to fix things. We love to multitask. And we are passionate people. And sometimes that gets in the way of leadership. And so we talked about kind of this idea of leadership latency and where we get delayed or stuck. And I know we talked about this, just a fragment of this, in a previous podcast that I was lucky to have the former CEO of Marvel Entertainment, Peter Cuneo, on the essentials of superhero leadership. But we didn't talk about this. So I appreciate you being on, and I appreciate you talking about this and tackling this. So first question, with all of that being said, for our audience doesn't know you that well. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a bit about how you've led specifically in your role within the military, and now as the president of a nonprofit, the Women's Military Foundation, and specifically, if you could share a few key areas where what you've learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And out of that, I know in my business, these light bulbs go off, and kind of like, what rules did I learn that I need to deploy today? So if you could share that, that would be great.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much, Jasmine. This is wonderful. And I find it interesting. Here we are, episode 58, and Warrior Women. What a great title. And to be the first military woman in on your podcast, I'm like, this is amazing. So I grew up, stereotypical, very, very low middle class, maybe even poor. I mean, we did not go to bed hungry as children, but we sometimes ate like 4 slices of bread with maybe some jelly on it if we had it, or just butter, but we always had something to eat. So it's not like we were dining well, but my dad and my mom always made sure that we had something to go to bed in our bellies. So when it came time about thinking going to college, my parents had never gone to college. Their families hadn't. So I thought I was going to go to college, and I was trying to work my way through on my own, and realized how long this was going to take at my pace. And I turned to the military and joined, not really fully understanding, because nobody in my family, like college, nobody in my family had served in the military except my mother's father. My grandfather had served in World War I, but he died in 1940 when my mother was 1 year old. And so she never knew him, and she never really talked about anything about him, not until much later in life, after I had already joined the military. So the military, the great thing and the bad thing, all at the same time, they foist you into leadership roles very quickly. You have no choice but to accept them. It's not like, I think I'll do that when I get a little bit more comfortable. Nope, sorry, you're going to do it. And sink or swim, you're going to figure this out. And We all learned how to swim apparently because we started doing it. And many times I think when Jasmine and I talked on the prep with this, we talked about reluctant leadership. And I
Right.
think that's really what this is boiling down to. Sometimes you look around and you're not the leader by title, but there's a great book out there and a super easy read called You Don't Need a Title to Be a Leader. And one
Oh,
of
I
the
love it.
women in an organization that she was, if you will, she was a secretary in a large organization,
Mm.
but she was the one that made everything work like clockwork in the organization. They all knew that she was, in fact, quite the leader. And I think that's one of the things we all have to learn how to embrace, that you don't need a special title. They are nice to have, I won't argue, because sometimes that also gives you the ability to sort of believe in yourself. We talked too
Yes.
about the imposter syndrome, right? And I
Yeah.
think I still suffer with that to this day. I don't know that you get over that. And
Mm.
in a way, I'm kind of glad that I haven't, because I don't want to be complacent. And
Yeah.
by me believing that maybe, God, how did I get here? Why am I the one doing these things? And I think we all question that. And I tell you too that while this is talking about women, I have 4 sons that are all combat veterans, and they've confided in me at times they suffer the imposter syndrome. They feel like they have to work extra hard just to look like they're as good as their
Yeah.
peers. So those are some of the things that I've struggled with along the way. But I can tell you that with age comes a little bit more of a. There's a song called Jody by Jody Messina. She's a country singer, and it's
Yeah.
like my give a dams got up and left kind of a thing.
Yeah. No, I know this song and I understand.
Yeah, exactly. So that's part of it. I think you get to a point where you're just comfortable enough with yourself to say, I know I'm never going to get 100% right, but I'm doing the best I can, and I'm doing it probably better than other people might in the same position. So, Jasmine, that's what I'd say is that latency. Sometimes we're a little slow on the uptake, but the military never let us be slow, even in basic training. You ended up being in charge of a squad or the entire platoon somewhere during the time that you were in there, just to see how you would deal with being put in charge of others.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things now that I want to talk about that aren't, I didn't have questions for before, but so I feel that you touched upon something that's very important, which is this need to be better as a woman. It's almost this perfectionist syndrome because we need to overachieve to meet achievement as leaders. I feel a lot of women do. And I think that causes this reluctancy, that we're talking about. So I wonder how women can start to overcome that a little bit to kind of give themselves to the song, to the point of the song, kind of like either a pat on the back, which we don't do. I do sometimes now because I look at it, I'm like, look what I did. Wow, I did that.
Yeah.
I just wonder how we start to overcome that because it feels though, based on what you're saying, that if we did a little bit more of that, that would give us room to experiment more in our businesses or in your case, running a nonprofit. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think there's 2 key things to that. You have to learn to give yourself some grace.
Mm,
Perfectionism is a freaking killer, absolute killer in our
yes.
lives, in our relationships. You know, it just give yourself some grace and allow that things are not, you're juggling how many balls right now, folks? Come
Oh
on.
my gosh.
So much, and just even the idea that your car also needs an oil change on top of everything else, and you're going to squeeze that in somehow, some way. Just
Right.
breathe, breathe, find some private time for yourself. I'm quite, even though I'm out here public speaking, I'm quite the introvert. When I am done at the end of the day, I don't
Mm.
need anybody else to recharge my batteries. I just need to be left alone. I don't want to talk to another human being for a few hours, and then I'm better. And then I'm ready to get back out there and do my job again. But I think there's that in the military too. And I think in the civil sector, you'll see it as well.
Mhm.
Surround yourselves, ladies, with trusted friends. Whether it's like you think about Sex in the City and some of these, where
Yeah.
you have these gal pals that you can rely on that are going to tell you got something in the middle of your front teeth. You need people like that in your life. The people that will let you walk around like that all day, they are not your best friends. They just aren't. So
No.
be willing to, even a stranger walking down the street where her skirt is inside of her underpants and you can see
Yeah, sure. I've seen
butt
it.
cheek, speak up, walk up to her and just politely go, excuse me, let me, fix that for her. Build this. The gal pal relationships are stunningly important in our lives. And
Absolutely.
they don't have to stick with you for the entirety of your life. They may be for a long chapter in your life, and it's time now to move on and find another. And if you have two or three in your life, or even just one amazing gal pal, count your lucky stars. They are hard to find. But once you found them, and then train yourself to be that one person to somebody else, because they're leaning on you just as much as you lean on them.
Yeah. No, I love that you bring that up because for a number of reasons. So first of all, in the world of being a woman in business or warrior women in business, and especially as a leader, it can be very lonely, especially as a leader. Even though you have a team of people, even if it's one or two people like we talked about previously, it's still a team that you're developing, and can become very lonely. Um, and you don't really need to be so tough because you do need to, those women can be very, very helpful. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how you've seen that work, specifically in the military, women in military, how they build friendships, how they work together, how they team, and is it different than the men?
I haven't found that it's been significantly different because, well, one, certainly when I first came in, we were about 10 or 12% of the military, and now we're closer to 20%
Oh,
40 years later.
great. That's
But
great.
we're
Well,
still a minority, no doubt. But in certain pockets, you will see, like in military intelligence, there's a fair number of women in that community. But in others, they are very rare and unusual to see a female in and around those spaces. But that doesn't mean that, and certainly we learned quickly, if you wanted mentorship, you better find a guy that is squared away and ask that person. You want monitor them just like you do the women, and you see things in a really amazing human being that you're like, gosh, I want to be like that person someday. And you walk up. I mean, mentorship is so highly prized in the military, and it's a biggest form of flattery. So if you've seen somebody in your life that you would like to emulate in any aspect of their lives, and you ask them, hey, would you coach me? I really admire what you do here and there. I'd love some mentorship. I mean, isn't that amazing if somebody came up and asked you to do that
yeah,
for
no,
them?
I love it. That's how I started Warrior Women in Business. I pulled together these coaches
Yeah.
and I
It,
said, there's a lot of people that would love to talk to you. Let's
mhm.
do this. And that's how I did the conference. And yeah, I think it's our duty when we get to a certain point in our careers and our life to give back because it helps build the women because they can't do it alone. You can't do it alone. I feel like
Correct.
it's mutually beneficial.
It's tremendously. I have learned as much from the people that I've mentored as those that have mentored me. It's a very symbiotic relationship. Sometimes these kiddos in their early 20s are teaching me things that I certainly, I just wasn't exposed to, but they share that. But I will tell you that women in the military, just like in so many other fields, we do tend to band together. And boy, let me tell you, one of us that's not in for the teamwork of it all is ostracized pretty quickly. We just don't have the time to, you know, sorry, moving on. We've got work to do.
That's what I love about the learnings from the military and business. It can be so different. It can be so different, and especially if you're a solopreneur, there's a lot of women that listen to this and watch this that are small business owners. And I want to talk about this for a second.
Yeah.
Small business owners develop, I don't really love the word small, but that's what the USBA calls it. So, but business owners that are developing and maybe they have one person working for them or a couple, or maybe they're fragmented with contractors. And for them, it's sometimes difficult to build teams. It's easy to be reluctant because a lot of times you're second guessing things. Sometimes they don't have access to mentors. Sometimes they don't know how to put processes together, and they're generally financially limited. And so I wonder what you have to say about that, like where they might be able to start or what they might be able to look at to develop processes and to build teams.
Yeah, certainly chambers of commerce are a great one to reach out to, get involved with those. There's other small businesses out there, lessons learned. Don't reinvent the wheel. Let somebody else
That's a
tell you
good,
how hard it was and what they went through. It may not be exactly the same as you, but the lessons learned can be applied. We just don't have the time when you're trying to crank up an organization, a small business. And if you're raising a family, you're doing so many other things in and around your community. This is a balancing act. And, when they talk about work-life balance, I just quickly, Jasmine, I want to talk about that for a second. There's
no,
no
I
such
would
thing.
love for you.
It's like people talk about dysfunctional families. Like, I'm from a dysfunctional family. We're all from dysfunctional families. There is no such thing as a functional, complete family. If you don't have a crazy Uncle Ed or somebody else in your family, then you're probably the crazy one. Just saying. But it's the same thing with a business. You can't balance everything at the same time. I learned that. I've raised a lot of kids, did a military career, tried to get my degrees along the way. But I liken work-life balance to a teeter-totter. When you go up and you go down. Well, if you've ever ridden on a teeter-totter, when it's
I love
completely
that.
level and both ends, your feet are up off the ground and
That's
nobody's,
right.
it's really not a lot of fun. But there are
That's
times
right.
when the
It's not
family
fun.
goes to the top
Mm.
and when that comes back down and work comes to the top again, and then you make it back up to the family when you can breathe again because of something big like a concert or something is happening. And
Just like
after that's over, it's like, okay, we're going out for hot dogs and ice cream and,
yes.
spend some time, cuddle up on the couch and watch a movie with them or read a book. But there's this idea that it's all going to work out beautifully every day is a misnomer. So please don't cry in your Cheerios over the fact that, oh, I'm a failure. I can't find work-life balance. I'm 64
Mm.
years old. I haven't figured it out, not on a consistent basis. I've come to accept in my life there are peaks and valleys. My parents are still alive, and they're in Florida. I'm in District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. area. Father's Day, I flew down on Saturday, I flew back on Sunday, but I was
Yep.
there to see my dad on Father's Day. Same thing with my Mother's Day thing. You have to craft it out. And I know it's not easy, trust me. But I would just tell you, do the best you can and give yourself the grace to say, maybe next year will look a little bit different, but maybe it won't. And is this as good as it gets? And is the job and the business that you're in, is it fulfilling enough to put up with what it, you know, the
The
asking
stress.
of life? And if it isn't, then start looking at how can I partner with somebody else? Do I still want to be a solopreneur? But there are a lot of lessons to learn as you figure it out. But you may come out the other side having succeeded and done everything extremely well. But there will be challenges. There's no bed of roses on this journey.
No. So but let me talk about that for a second. Then I want to get into what you do more and obviously the memorial. So I want to talk about goal setting a little bit. Um, Goal setting as a business owner or a female executive, a lot of the women that I'm involved with are female executives, sometimes turning entrepreneurs, sometimes have a 5, 10 year plan.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're regimented, sometimes they're all over the place. They are women. So goal setting in business, just to tail off of what you said, right? Goal setting in business, you have a forecasted plan. Many times you don't meet that plan, especially if you're a business owner and existing or new business owner, right? Sometimes
Mhm.
you just don't meet those objectives, right? I wonder what we can learn from the military in terms of, in your experience in goal setting, more reasonable goal setting. Like you said something to me that piqued this. You said, which I love, you might not do it all, but maybe next year you'll tackle plan B or whatever. So I'm just wondering about goal setting, like your experience in goal setting, not meeting goals, how to better meet goals that you've established, maybe reducing goals. Like I
Now,
just get that question a
I
lot.
don't I don't do that. I set goals that are
Okay.
so lofty and so practically unachievable that people will tell me it's unrealistic. Many
Okay.
times it is, but I
Yeah.
need a stretch goal. If you make it achievable, no, I think I can get, you know, 20 new clients. I can do something, whatever, in the next 2 years. Trust me, you may, if it's totally achievable, you'll get 20. You won't get 22, you won't get 25. So if you believe you can absolutely hit 20, then raise your goal to 30 and push
Mhm.
it. Because we become comfortable with whatever the goal is. If we're trying to raise $100,000 for something, you're likely not going to raise 200. You might raise 110, but I need to raise $5 million a year for this place. And so that's just to hold steady. So my 5-year plan sees a $500,000 increase every year over the next 5 years.
Makes sense.
Are we going to get there? I don't know. But if I don't make it that kind of a goal where I really got to work hard, where I can add a couple new employees every year,
Yes.
then we'll never get there. So, and I'm okay with not reaching goals, such as we have a number of women's stories in our national database. Well, our goal this year is to add 25,000 new stories into that database. We are most likely, we're halfway through the year, we're not trending to get there, but it doesn't mean we don't put all, lean your shoulder hard against the effort and get there. If we get 10,000, that's still far more than we've had any time in the last 20 years. We normally
Right.
run between 3 and 6,000. So if we get
Right.
10,000, it's still a great year. But
Right.
I think we can get 25,000. And if I don't continue to, as a matter of fact, after I get done with this, I'm going to a meeting with people from every state of the nation, encouraging them to bring me 500 from each of their states. So you just don't know where you can get, but if you make it it's a comfortable, achievable, so you can pat yourself on the back, and I made that goal. But don't be upset with making 80% of a goal, which still overachieved what you had done in the past. I think it's what I need, a kick in the pants, to never become complacent or comfortable with where I need to be, because there's so
Yes.
many stories that I need to get into that database.
Yes. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you on setting large goals. One thing I've found in my work and doing work for other companies is when it's about looking at those achievements and learning from those micro achievements, right? You know what I mean? So if you go from, let's say, 3 to 6, whatever that means, right? You double instead of triple. A lot of times companies will say, I want an ROAS of 3 to 1 or whatever they say to me. And I say, okay, whatever. And then I achieve for them, but I'm teaching them along the way. Well, this is working, but this isn't. So a lot of it is about, you have to have goal setting, but you also have to look at what works and then put more fuel in that area instead of getting upset that you didn't make the mass or macro goal. That's just my own, experience. And I feel that that helps the companies propel and understand better what the goal for next year or the year after has to be.
Yeah, and Jasmine, exactly to what you were saying is the idea that once you set a goal for, January 1 through December 31st, you can't wait to look at everything until December, because you could have course corrected every quarter along the way, and maybe you wouldn't have reached the pinnacle number, but you could have maybe gone up an extra 25%, because metrics are important, and there are lagging indicators, which just means this is how you did last quarter, but it doesn't indicate how you're going to do next quarter. And so you've got to assess what those indicators, the metrics, tell you. Okay, what could we do differently, tweaking this, and then looking at it next quarter or every month, or whatever the frequency is that you need it to, and tweak it a little, and then watch and see what happens. This is a rheostat. It's like your thermostat. Turn it up a little, turn it down a little. What's happening when I do this?
Right. You wouldn't throw something in the oven and never look at it. I love that I love that analogy that
Yeah.
cooking is like, to me, it's such a craft. I'm not a great cook, but
You live in the city, though. You don't have to be. You have.
no, my boyfriend is a tremendous cook, so I'm a lucky
Yes,
person.
that's lovely.
So, but I mean, it's the same thing. You got multiple things going on the stove, and you wouldn't just walk away from it and
No,
not
absolutely
tend to
not.
it. And I think that a lot of times people do that, well, in my world with marketing, and that's why they come to us. Well, this didn't work. I hired this agency. I said, okay, well, what metrics, like you said, are in place, and how are you measuring things? Because data can't scare you. It has to be
No,
your
no.
friend, right?
Absolutely. And that's what I would tell all of anybody listening to this. The data is so incredibly important, to pulling those numbers, seeing things, because even in different markets within like one metro area, you may see this really resonates here and it absolutely fell flat over there. And you're like, why
Yes.
is that? So then you have to dumpster dive into the rationale behind those things. But if you wait till the end of the year and go, oh crap, we didn't make goal again, but and then you rinse and repeat the same thing that you did this past year for next year and wonder why you're still not, I mean, the definition of insanity, right, Jasmine?
Right. And nothing's worse to me than wasting time. When you're a business owner, I mean, I always say being a business owner, I value time over money a lot of times because
Oh,
the time is so important to grow something
mhm.
and to learn from your mistakes and make changes and you know. So
Yeah, and there's no extra hours. I mean, we're short on staff here because funding drives whether, our budget and whether we can afford to hire other people. And so sometimes we're working till, past midnight. I get emails from like my chief of staff at 2 o'clock in the morning.
really,
And we're just working around the clock trying to keep this beautiful national memorial open to the public. And because by law, it has to be free admission, which, okay, I'm great with that. But by law, because we're a national memorial, we also have to be uplit. The front of this, just behind the water you see behind me, has to be illuminated every night.
beautiful.
But they don't pay the light bill for all of
Yeah,
that.
that must be pretty expensive. So can you talk a little bit now? Let's talk about the experience of the memorial. Talk about what you do there. Talk about the more what people can expect.
Yeah.
Events. I mean, it's just we want to know more about that. So please.
The memorial is a fantastic place. It's almost 27 years old, but the front wall that if you can see it behind me, was built in the 1930s in the height of the Great Depression. And it was really never completely finished. And then it was set to languish. World War II happened. It got overgrown. There was no reflecting pool out front at the time. Ivy and weeds were growing up the front wall. It was derelict. And then in the 1980s, Congress approved the creation of a military women's memorial. And then the hunt was on around Washington, D.C. on where to locate it. And ultimately, this is at the entrance to Arlington National Cemetery. It was a retaining wall only. So it was a hillside behind it. But when they were out scouting areas in the early 1990s, this was the one as they stood up on what is now our rooftop terrace, which if I were standing up there and facing the direction I am now, I'd be looking right down Memorial Drive over the Potomac, and dead in front of me, I mean, directly centered in front of me is the Lincoln Memorial. Nothing between us
Wow,
and
that's
Lincoln.
incredible.
So it's stunning.
That's
And
incredible.
yeah, it's such a beautiful place. But right behind it and all up the hillside behind are the white grave markers of Arlington National Cemetery. So there's over 400,000 Americans and some foreigners that have been laid to rest here at Arlington. But when this was the site located in the 90s, ground was broken in 1995. President and Mrs. Clinton were here with their golden shovels as well to help break ground. And in 97, the memorial was opened. It's 33,000 square feet. It is a half circle wall. So behind that wall, you start at one end with the Revolutionary War, and you continue around all of the artifacts and exhibitions that then bring you to current day women in the military. Paintings, sculptures, memorabilia, uniforms, boots, you name it, they're there. And we have 4 listening stations, so short, where about 5-6 people can sit and listen to a short documentary. But we also have a large meeting space, a multi-purpose room that can seat about 220 people to watch a documentary, sit down dinners, happy hours, receptions. We do it all. And that's part of how we bring in some of our revenue, is by people booking and hosting events inside of the Military Women's Memorial. And then, of course, to go up onto that rooftop terrace is just stunning, especially in the evenings, because of course ours is uplit, but also of course the Lincoln Memorial is uplit. So
Yes.
it's beautiful. And our mission is simple: honor and tell the stories of the 3 million plus women that have helped to defend this country. And it's a privilege every day to walk into that building and to watch men and women, boys and girls, learn a little bit more about their own American history, just told from the language and story and vantage of a woman, as opposed to all the stories we heard about of the men like George Washington or Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
We tell it a little differently.
Right. Isn't that interesting? it just dawned on me that they don't, the stories of the women in military are so small in terms of what we know as children growing up and going to school.
Yeah,
So
well,
is that something, is there teachings that they do they do field trips there and teachings in the schools and things like
we
that?
do. We see so many school trips that come here, and we have, if you're not familiar with honor flights, they come from across the country. So older veterans that, it's like almost their dying wish. So World War II, Korea,
Yeah.
Vietnam, those veterans are the different states and portals across the country. They fundraise and then they take these older veterans on flights if need be, or on bus trips if they're closer. They fly them in here, they get on these luxury chartered buses, and they take them around to the World War II Memorial, to the Korea, to the Vietnam Memorial Wall, to the Lincoln, and certainly to us. Also here at Arlington, they go up to watch the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown
Oh,
Soldier. But we're the only one of these memorials that actually has an inside air-conditioned, great restrooms space. And so typically lunch or a snack or a nice break, they'll come to us. And it's just been stunning to watch these men and women come and see their memorials and learn the stories, certainly of, in our case, the military women. Now, the reason we didn't learn so much about women back in the day was we weren't even legally allowed to be part of the military until in 1901 with the Army Nurse Corps. Very few served in World War One, and then World War II was really when Katie barred the door, everything opened up. Nearly 400,000 women wore uniforms serving the country. And then, of course, you have the Rosie the Riveters and the Women's Land Army. Think about it. All of the men that were shipped overseas during World War II, both Pacific and European theaters of war, we were still growing all our crops, and most of it was by men that were out there. Some didn't have tractors. They were doing it with horses and plows and so forth. And suddenly all these men, the farm laborers, were gone. And so they invited high school girls, you had to be at least 15 years of age, and young women to go out there to help work in the fields, to harvest the crops, pick the apples, do all of those things to keep not only America fed, but that food needed to be processed and sent over to our men and women that were serving overseas. So after that, that's when we started really ramping up on the number of women that were permitted to serve in the military.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. So it must be a busy season in the summer, right?
Yes, it's a very busy season, but
It
it's,
must be.
it's a lovely time. We love watching, especially the kids, the children, when they come through and they're like, I didn't know. But again, I served for 37 years in the Army, and the first time I walked into the memorial, it had been open for 16 years. I had never even heard of it. And so I walk in here as a soldier myself, and I'm like, what is this place?
Wow,
I
that's
was smitten.
incredible. You must have been just blown away.
I was, and it was
Yeah.
in 2013. And I have learned so many of these stories in the nearly 5 years I've been here
Mhm.
that I never heard once the whole time I was in the Army. And these are Army
Oh,
women
wow.
stories. And nobody knew to tell us. And so I'm on a mission of making sure America knows, because I think all of us as women can stand up a little bit straighter, a little bit prouder, knowing what some of our women in past generations were willing to do to defend this country and give us the opportunities that we now, many, just take for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked a little bit about, I love that there's restaurants. It sounds wonderful. The restaurants and the ability to actually host events there.
Oh, well,
So,
we don't actually, let me be clear. I meant restrooms. If I said restaurants, I'm
oh, I
sorry.
thought you said restaurants. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
This looks,
we don't have a full kitchen. We have a catering kitchen, but I can
oh,
tell
okay.
you the foods that we have served here, we have five suggested caterers, but you can use anybody that you want as long as we get them vetted, because they have to come
Okay.
into Arlington National Cemetery space. So they have to be pre-cleared through security. But the meals that we have served here are world class.
So I was just wondering so what are the types of groups that do events there and how can someone book an event? How does that
Oh,
work?
just contact us at womensmemorial.org. Go to our website. You'll
Yeah, we'll
see
put
an
that in the show
events
notes.
thing, and you'll see some of the photos of what some of our spaces look like. We do stunning galas. up lighting. You
Oh,
choose the
okay.
colors. I mean, it is beautiful. As a matter of fact, our annual fundraiser gala last year, we had Blair Underwood, who's working to bring a Broadway musical about a group of women of World War II. It's the same
Really?
group. It's called the 6888, the
Oh, I need to get
6888.
into this.
Um, that's the name of the musical.
Yeah.
They're working it, but they're going to take it first over to England, where these women first served. Then they served in France, and then they're going to bring it to Broadway. And Tyler Perry is doing a Netflix film coming out later this year with Kerry Washington
Wow.
about the 6888. And Tyler has said that to date, this is the most important work that he's done in his career. And we're working to bring Kerry to our gala this year as well because of that. So yeah, we're really trying to bring what women have done and are doing today, this cutting edge technology that we now have with AI and cyber and
Oh,
space. These women are out there doing the hard work and they're leading from the very front. These are the things that we want when we talk about women in STEM and women in STEAM, because, like I said, we have fantastic artwork displays, we have statuary, we have things in there that we really want to be clear that we're not just a STEM, although a lot of it you would argue the military is more on the STEM side, the science and technology,
right.
but the arts are so important. To that point, we actually have concerts inside here with world-class singers that are actually they PhDs and masters prepared musicians and singers
Mhm.
that are enlisted into the United States military, and that is their full-time profession, is to go around and entertain and to sing. And so some of these groups have been here for us. It's stunning. They could easily, I mean, they could do a Broadway musical and be in the
Yes.
lead. They're that good. So anything and everything that you think you might want to do in a space that you would usually use a hotel ballroom or a happy hour reception, our artwork, we'll bring it out on display. We have some original Norman Rockwell that
Oh,
small groups will come. We'll host, you know, light refreshments, open bar, and education series on why do we have this and what about Norman Rockwell connects into the Military Women's Memorial. So you leave there feeling a little bit smarter, hopefully, but then if you wander up on that rooftop terrace in the evening, it's just, there's no better place in the country as far as I'm concerned. It's
I mean, I,
just
I remember going
beauty.
to the Lincoln Memorial and
Doesn't
can't,
it do something to your
I
heart?
just can't explain how I felt.
Yeah,
It's so, I don't know. It's like very breathtaking. It's breathtaking. It kind of changes you, makes you want to learn more about our history.
yeah, yeah.
So, and I think it's important for, I mean, I'm not in the military or government, but I think it's important for Americans, new Americans, old Americans, to know about our country. A lot of people don't have any idea. Something like this is, I couldn't believe I didn't know about it. You know, I am a woman and I've been living in the
Well,
Northeast for,
be a woman in the military for going on 30 years and you never knew it was there. It's like, oh my gosh. And I think I'm well read. I'm well informed. How did I not know? And that's why when Jasmine, when you offered me the opportunity to come and talk to this cohort and to say, listen, the biggest part is that Military Women's Memorial National Repository Database, where 315,000 plus women's stories are in there, living and deceased. My story's in there. Is we want every woman's story, because collectively that powerful storytelling is just amplified. Whether you
absolutely.
serve for a couple of years or a couple of decades, every one of us, our service, it's like women in business. All of us together make such a huge impact, but one by themselves, it's like, okay, yeah, so she did that.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
we did this together, and that's the
Yes.
same kind of thing. And what women that have served in the military, whether for a short 3, 4, 5 years or for 30 years, when they go back into civilian life, they carry that same skill set, the leadership tools, the mentorship, and that sense of purpose to do better for your nation and for your hometown. I think, leverage them. If you have an
I know,
opportunity
it's
to
funny because
hire
I've been
them,
looking.
do.
I was looking, I was thinking, wow, I always thought the best people to hire, because I really only hire women, is women in the military, and moms. Because what what tougher, smarter women, and I'm always like, where do you find these people? Where do you find these people? Because honestly, they're not, and if they're doing that, they don't really put it on their resume. It's interesting to me. They want to lead with business, but I don't think that's as exciting or interesting as that type of background is so special, and you learn the
Well,
processes,
you
and
know, one of the sad things too, though, the
men and
media
women.
portrays people in the military, especially those of us that have been to combat zones, that we must all be slightly mentally deranged. We must have PTSD. We must not, be careful. We might carry a gun into the workplace and start shooting the place up or something. And it's like, oh, come on, people, stop
Silly.
this. But I will tell you, a group that is wholly underserved are the military spouses. And because 80% plus are men, therefore, likely, the very large percentage of military spouses are women. And because they relocate every 3-4 years with their spouse, because they're forced to move every couple of years because the military does that to us, they just get started with a job and now they've moved. And if that's not a big company that they can transfer with, they wait till they get hubby all situated in his new assignment, get the house unpacked, get the kids off to school, sign up for school and do all of that, figure out what's
Yeah.
going on, and then they start looking for a job. And many times, by the time they take things that they are so vastly overqualified for, but they take it because it's a job, right? And just about the time they're about ready to move to where they really should be within that profession,
They have to move
time to
again.
move again. And
Yeah.
I've met women that are in their early 40s, spouses of a military man, that they finally got their first job promotion in their 40s because they never were still long enough to not only get in the door, but be there long enough to see that promotion. Now, for me, part of the reason that I became a nurse was I had left regular Army and become an Army Reserve soldier, which was
I see.
one weekend a month, and I still loved doing that. But I knew that with my husband being active duty in the military and we were going to move every couple of years, and I really had wanted to become a registered nurse, and it's portable, and I didn't have to wait any period of time in order to become a hired. I could actually have a job before I even arrived at the new location. But I have two of my very best teammates here are military spouses, and they
Yeah.
totally get that what they've gone through to now be prized and championed as a chief of staff or my senior accountant here are military spouses and no better employees because they're so honored that you're going to take a chance on them. It's over 20% unemployment rate for military spouses.
That's incredible. I have a very good friend of mine actually from my IBM days who's a military spouse. And I try to keep up with her. It's very difficult. She's constantly, like you said, moving.
Yeah.
And when I tell you she's brilliant, brilliant. And I say to her, well, you should be, and I always say to her, you should be leading a company. But it's because I think she's a military spouse that
Mhm.
she's continually getting displaced.
Yeah, they
So
put their
and
career on
actually I
hold.
talked to her about that. I didn't know how do you hire these people. So I didn't know if there's an association that's supporting them, but I
There are, even within Department of Defense, there's a huge look now on talent management, not just those that wear the uniform, but certainly for the families, because the argument is you recruit in an individual to join the military, but you keep them by taking care of the family and by taking care of that spouse in particular in this case. And then childcare, of course, becomes a big issue if both parents are
of
trying to
course,
have a job.
right.
Yeah, now childcare gets so cost prohibitive that typically it's like I'll just stay home as the non-military person saying, I'm spending almost half or 3/4, sometimes 100% of your paycheck goes to childcare. So why are
Oh.
you doing that?
Yeah. Okay, so I know it's about 1:50, so I just want to be respectful of your time. I asked all my guests when I asked them to be on Warrior Women in Business, and you didn't know me. A lot of my guests know me. I just
Yeah.
rang you up. What did you think about Warrior Women in Business, the term, and now you got to see it a little bit?
Well, I guess I kind of thought that there was more of a military bent to it, but I love the moniker. I really do. Warrior Women in Business, because warriors just take on so many, to me, positive attributes. I don't think of it as a negative at all, because I mean, we're in there, you're fighting the good fight. And it is, I mean, you got to gird yourself for battle, ladies. The business is not easy, and it is not for the weak. It
No,
isn't. You have to, especially if you're leading an organization, you're trying to take care of people, you're looking at benefits packages. Our new one starts 1 July. So all of those things, I mean, you are fighting on so many fronts, and then you're fighting in your personal life as well. Not bad fighting, I mean fighting for good, like Marvel super characters.
that's right.
So I think Warrior Women in Business is just a really class act term that we should all embrace that and say, yes, I am. I am one of those warrior women. We are in business. We're changing the world, maybe your little slice of the world. You don't have to fix everything for everybody. Nobody can do that, to be honest. But if you can make it better for just even a few people in your life and those that work in and around you, I think you're winning. You're absolutely winning. Because if we all did that and we all made an impact, let's say with 5 or 10 people, look how many people we could really make this world a little bit easier for. It's not going to be perfect, but we could ease the load and just be there with a box of tissues when somebody needs to cry on your shoulder, or a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, whatever it takes. But be there. In the military, we don't ever fight alone, and we always say, I will never leave a fallen comrade behind. And that's the thing. If you're going to carry this as warrior women in business, you better own it. You will never leave somebody behind. You pick them up, you carry them, you dust them off. It means a lot to me. I was in combat. We didn't leave anybody behind. There might have been a body we went and got, but we brought them home. You do the same thing as warrior women in business.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Really, really, really. I think with leaders, which is where we started today, and leaders sometimes being alone, it's important that leaders support each other.
Oh, yeah.
Love that you talked about getting a glass of wine or just connecting with another leader who may be lonely or displaced, or, military spouse, or, someone that's brilliant, but no one knows, and she's kind of struggling with herself. And I think the leaders connecting with each other is not often talked about. And I think it's very important for the entire mission of women supporting each other.
Yeah.
It's not just
One
women lifting youngers up, which is great, but the leaders, just let's mentor each other, let's help each other.
If
right?
you check out Amy Gilliland, she is the president of General Dynamics Information Technology, GDIT, very large defense company here.
Yeah, I know the name.
Amy is a Navy veteran herself, and this big company, she takes it very seriously. So she launched a project program called How Are You Really? And she encourages everybody from herself down that when you see another GDIT staff member and you walk by and say, hey, how are you? And you just keep going by and hope they don't, good, thanks. No. How are you really? And when I met with her on one of our prep meetings as well, before she did a fireside chat here at the memorial, we talked about that and she asked me, and then she waited. So how are you, Phyllis? Really?
Wow.
And then she just pauses and waits, that pregnant pause, that silence that you feel like you need
Right,
to feel,
makes your
right?
brain go crazy. Yeah.
And you're like, oh gosh, how am I really? I'm thinking I'm trying to make payroll. My mom has early Alzheimer's. How am I really? But you start. So I would encourage you. That's the thing. Over a glass of wine or something, when somebody already ask them, how are they really? And then wait. Because that silence is exactly what you need to let them think it through and realize, boy, there are a couple of areas I could just use somebody to be able to dump it onto, because it lightens your load. I'm not asking them to carry it for me. Just accept it, hear it, and then go from there.
Oh,
So I
love
think we've got to be better at that as women, in particular for our fellow women.
Absolutely. I think it makes a big difference, and it's too much of the it's really about, I love that you're talking about really helping each other, leaving no one behind. Because
Yeah.
there are a lot, I mean, I'm not saying that every woman is caring, but sometimes I think this being a leader and running a business gets in the way and reduces our ability to care. And I think it's so important.
Well,
So I
I have
really,
found that you will be more successful and achieve more in life the more that you're willing to give to others. You know, when you think, oh, I got to get mine first and then I'll help others, you'll never get yours first. You won't get it. But if you're willing to build that coalition, that team, whatever you want to call it, as warrior women, it's called warrior women, not warrior woman, right?
right.
Yeah, so it's plural. And you've got to build a small group of other women that you know you can trust and lean on. And if you don't have somebody in your life that you could call them at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, I gotta talk now. And they go, I'm up, call me, let's talk. Find somebody. They're out there. You just have to build it. But you also have to be that for somebody else too. Why would you expect somebody to do it for you if you're not willing to do it for somebody else?
That's right. That's right. So being that I know you're busy and we have to end because I have a concert tomorrow and so many big things happening.
That's
I
so
would like
good.
for you just to share a little bit. Again, I personally can't wait to come down. One thing I want to say is I'm going to put a group together of warrior women from New York. We're going to come down. We're going to do an event. There is no doubt in my mind that we're not doing that. But I think there's a lot of opportunities that you talked about. More important, having anybody that's the people that are listening, watching to experience and learn our history of women in the military is very important. So last words on, a good way to reach out, best times to come down, number of people in a group, how to think about doing things there, anything on that. And just note everyone, all of this will be in the show notes when the podcast is edited and sent out to everybody that's RSVP'd. You'll get all this information. But Phyllis, please.
Yeah. So the Military Women's Memorial, if you go to the website, which is womensmemorial.org, you will see there's lots of information on there. Hours are 9 to 5 every day except Sunday, noon to 5, free admission. Group wise, we have docents that can do a guided tour if you want, or you can just wander through. The guided tours, once it gets more than about 25 people, you can't hear well. So we can break you into multiple smaller groups and just run about every 10 minutes and get you down partway through the gallery exhibition spaces and then start a new one and bring you on through. It takes about 45 minutes if you're going to get like a really full on tour. But yeah, anything from small groups. We've had groups of 25 book for a happy hour. We close at 5 normally, but it doesn't mean that you can't come and host. We can hold evening events. We do it all the time. Or early on Sunday mornings, we've had people that wanted to come in on a Sunday morning for coffee and watch a documentary and then have a roundtable discussion or a fireside chat. We're amenable because, again, you help fund what we need to do. So if you're willing to pay, and we're very inexpensive, to be honest with you, especially here in the DC area. So
That's true.
check that
Compared to
out.
New York, I think it's a no-brainer.
Yes, I'm quite confident of that. But yeah, we'd love to have that. We're on, if you look, Military Women's Memorial on all of the platforms except TikTok. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X. And we also have our own YouTube channel with about 100 videos about some amazing military women and some of our past events. So you can sort of see what it looks like inside the memorial as well. But some are simple, short 3-minute like vignettes of an amazing military woman of days gone by. And some are 45-minute interviews with like a woman that graduated in the first class from the Air Force Academy in 1980 when women were first allowed to go to West Point or the Naval Academy. First ones graduated in 1980 and then became an astronaut, flew up to the International Space Station and stuff. So there's all kinds of great things that you can see, lots of photos on our website as well. And get started there and feel free to reach out to us. There's a contact us right there on the homepage.
Okay, and one last question. So if anybody that's listening, watching this podcast has a woman in military that's at active duty in their family, how could they submit a story to you? How do they do that?
Exactly. Go to the same website, womensmemorial.org. And actually, everybody that's watching this can create your own account. In the
Okay.
top right on our webpage, homepage, it says create an account. If you don't already know what that means, it means you don't have one. So create an account. You'll either become a friend of the memorial, like Jasmine would, or you would be a member if you are, in fact, the question that will only decide which category you fall into is, are you a woman that has ever served in the United States military? Yes or no. If it's no, you're a friend. If it's yes, you're a member. And from there, you can find a servicewoman. There's a tab inside your account where you can put in that woman's name. Maybe your grandmother, a great grandmother, a great aunt, a sister, who knows? You put that name in, living or deceased, see if they're already registered. Now, if it's somebody that's deceased and in your family, tag your it. We need you to help put that story in. And to find out exactly what these story cards look like, put in a name like Julia Child or Marilyn Monroe, and their story card will come up and you will find that. Or put in Phyllis Wilson. You'll see my story card. It's a photo, the years of service, memorable experiences, where they served, when they served, and their awards. So if you can help us to get more of these women's stories into our national this is the one place. It's a research database where we ideally will have every woman that has ever served, her story in here. And then when you visit the memorial, you'll go to one of our computer kiosks, you'll type it in, her name, you'll see it on the small screen, and then a place where you can cast it to a very large screen up on the wall here inside the memorial. Now, families get all choked up when that happens
Of
because
course.
they're like, oh my God, my daughter, my grandmother, whoever it is, she is here at the National Military Women's Memorial Story forever. And we just want to make sure those stories are there. So when we go back and we look to see what women did in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and today, we can incorporate all of these stories to give us a much better picture of the kinds of things that women, their courage, their service, their sacrifice, and yeah, sometimes the bad things that happen. But we need to know these stories because we can't tell what we've not been told. Most women in the military will never have a book, a chapter,
Right.
or even a
Or a book
podcast.
report.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I was thinking about.
make it happen.
Make
Put your
make it make a
stories
book
in.
report happen. I
Yeah,
mean, get it down. So I'm thinking maybe something we could do is do a some type of image or little video we can share on our channels as well for you
that'd be
to
great.
kind of show people how this works, how you can do it, what it looks like. I think it's so important. I
Yeah.
think it's so, so important. It's wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this. And I really, again, I think you've got one of the best monikers with the warrior women in business. And it is a battlefront, it is a war zone, and it can also be um, for those of us that have gone truly to war, they're our best friends for life are the ones that we work that hard. And so you're working that hard in business. Find your battle buddies and stick close to them and be willing to sometimes be a little bit raw and available to them so that they know when you're vulnerable because they'll have
Absolutely.
you back. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the key. So a couple of things. So first of all, I want to thank you so much, Phyllis, for being so open, sharing such great stories with us, giving us the education about what's there. This is such new territory for a lot of the listeners that I have, and I would love for them to experience it. So thank you so much for everything. And I think we'll be meeting you in person when we all come down.
Yes.
So, but just a couple of things. So yes, we are making a new signature Warrior Women t-shirt and tank top because now we're in the summer season. And that will be on our website coming in July. We'll be raising money to support their mission as well as part of the proceeds of the sales of that. This podcast will be edited and shared on all Warrior Women in Business channels over the next week. And also we'll share more information. Anything, Phyllis, you want to give us to get out the word, share more information, how people can get involved, whether it's you want to create an event, which would be great. A gala, I love galas. And I love galas. Or, if you want to attend and you want to learn more, we'll put all that information in the show notes. Tomorrow evening is our Warrior Women female-fronted band concert series, which is an inaugural event. It's been a lot of work, very excited about it. And so there still are some free tickets left. It's completely free. The bands are getting paid. That's the mission of the whole thing, to support New York Music Month, pioneered by Shira Gann. So please check out any Warrior Women in Business channel has a link. So hopefully we'll see you tomorrow evening. But for episode 58, I encourage you all to visit the website, the Women's Military Memorial website. I encourage you all to share your stories. Think about doing an event there. There's a lot of women that are in the DC area, definitely in the Virginia area, that I know that listen to this and watch this. So please, it's just a drive. So, take advantage of this. It's incredible, incredible. So again, I want to thank you so much, Phyllis, for your time and your education. And again, I look forward to meeting you in person, as well as the other Warrior Women, and learning more. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a privilege.
All right, so signing off from episode 58, this is Jasmine Sandler with Phyllis Wilson, our prestige guest today for Warrior Women in Business. Look forward to our event and more podcasts to come. Thank you.